Today we are going to be doing an in-depth draft analysis for the Wooper Club League Season 4. This is the first season where we have a draft league format for the league. In the past, we had 2 seasons of Monotype and then 1 season of VGC, so it's been kind of all over the place, but a lot of work went into preparing this format, and we're excited to finally kick it off. I'm here today with 2 other folks who I will let go ahead and introduce themselves.
Hello, my name is Nate, also Illogic, coach of the Buffalo Bouffalant, and I won seasons 2 and 3 of the Wooper Club League. Glad to be here.
And I am Steven, or Steve Chuck, or Stokar13. I'm the coach of the Waterdeep Wobbuffets and the winner of season 1.
Matt, the coach of the Cincinnati Incineroar. Have yet to win a title, but that's okay. I'll get there eventually. And
hopefully you'll settle for second this year.
Yeah. When Nate takes his 3rd in a row. Okay, so Nate and I both have some draft league experience, but overall this is actually a pretty new thing for most of us. And so it's really interesting to see how everyone did. And, obviously some things will be optimized a little more going into the next season that we do this, such as, tiers and maybe the rule set. But yeah, I'll give a quick overview of that and, what makes this like the unique Wooper Club League experience. One thing that we wanted to do was, most of us wanted to do, was to enable Dynamax in some capacity. So we decided to allow Dynamax, but only for Pokemon that are found in Tier 5, the lowest tier that we have, which is worth 40 points on our point scale as well. So you draft 10 Pokemon, and any of them that happen to be from that 5th tier are able to take advantage of that Dynamax ability, and if they have a Gigantamax form available to them, then they can take advantage of that as well. And so that definitely shaped some picks. Some very good bargain Pokemon were able to be found down there, and that will certainly shape some of the discussion as we get into the reasoning behind why certain coaches made the picks that they did. Other things to note are that the first week of the league is actually this week, and so we have matches kicking off actually very recently, and so it's going to be a great season. I think that the caliber of the drafted teams definitely does not imply that most of us are beginners, and I can't wait to get into that with a little more depth. So without further ado, let's take it to the first coach. All right, so up first we have actually the first coach who drafted in the league this season, and that is Clark of the Blessed Walreins. The Blessed Walreins have a beautiful team logo designed by Clark himself, and he is a newcomer to the draft league format in general, and he has an interesting team here that we're gonna run through. So yeah, thanks for joining us, Clark. He's actually here with us to give his thoughts on his draft process.
Yeah, I'm proud to be here. Now, it was an interesting decision-making process because I was going first, and up first we started with Dracovish. Dracovish is a very powerful attacker, and I really just liked him for his design anyway. And next I chose Toxtricity. Oh, I don't know if you guys wanted to talk about Dracovish a little bit.
Yeah, Dracovish, I mean, it's definitely cool. A very powerful Pokemon that a lot of us expected to go quickly in the draft. One of the first picks for sure. And Fishious Rend hits hard. It kind of forces other people to kind of draft around it. Make sure that they have a counter to that and just don't get swept in every single match that they go up against you. And yeah. Definitely
it's incredibly polarizing for sure. Like, that's definitely something you have to prepare for every single time you go in. Worthy of a number 1 pick because it's something you can bring every time, know that they have to prep for it, and it sweeps unprepared teams with ease.
Definitely. Yeah. And so looking at the rest of your draft here, we've got in order Toxtricity, Frothorn, Mamoswine, Mandibuzz, Hatterene, Pyukumuku, Colossal, Ribombee, and Galarian Slowpoke, which is an interesting pick to round out the draft. So I think that we've got a lot of interesting synergy here. Is there any specific Pokemon you want to touch on about why you drafted it before we move on to analyzing specifics?
Yeah, sure. You mentioned Slowpoke. Slowpoke was literally just I had 40 points. I was now the last pick in the draft, and it didn't really matter what I picked at that point. So I kind of just went for something funny. Ferrothorn is one that I really wanted to talk about, though, because I've never used Ferrothorn competitively, but I know that I've seen it so much, especially in previous generations, and I hate battling it. I never have a good fire Pokemon on my team. I have no check for it, and I really just didn't want anybody else to have this.
Yeah, well, sounds like a good reason for me. It's definitely a great Pokemon, especially in Draft League, because like you said, you really need an answer for it to be able to break through the wall that it is. And plus, it can set up hazards too. So, yeah, that being said, let's jump over to some of the stats on this team. Just looking at it really quick, just an aesthetic stat. I'm noticing a lot of your Pokemon are really new. You only have one Pokemon older than Gen 5, and that is Mamoswine, being from Gen 4, of course. You've got Ferrothorn and Mandibuzz from Gen 5. From Gen 6, I'm not seeing anything, but from 7, you have Pyukumuku, Ribombee. And then from 8, you have Dracovish, Hatterene, Toxtricity, Colossal, and I guess you can count Galarian Slowpoke. So a very new, heavy team. Did you acknowledge that while you were drafting, or did it just kind of work out that way?
Yeah, it kind of worked out that way. I always kind of make an effort to pick Pokemon that I never really get to use because, when you have 1,000 different choices, and it was much more limited this generation because of, all the Pokemon that did not make the cut, you kind of have to play around those limitations and try out new things. Like in previous competitive scenes, I've done, Tropius and Torkoal, and they may not be good Pokemon, but they're the ones that I like aesthetically. So it was a lot of fun to try out what's new, and I know that not everyone has played Sword and Shield, so people might be up against some Pokemon they've never seen before. That gives me an element of surprise. Who knows? Maybe that's useful.
Yeah, that's definitely a good factor here. The element of surprise is good, and I think your team is a good example of just how impactful the Gen 8 Pokemon have already been, even though the games are so relatively new. The meta kind of demands their attention, and there's no better example of that than Dracovish, in my opinion. So yeah, let's now jump into, type synergy here. You guys have anything you want to point out?
Yeah, I thought Pyukumuku was a steel type, so I was already picking the wrong thing. I guess it's another water type. So now with Dracovish, Slowpoke, and Pyukumuku, that's
Actually,
3
Galarian
water
Slowpoke
types.
is pure psychic type.
Wait, Pyukumuku? Wait, Slowpoke or?
Galarian Slowpoke, yeah, it's not water type.
What? Alright, he's always been water psychic to me.
Yep,
So,
well, he has until he got a new form. So
see, that's the element of surprise I'm talking about. I don't even know what's going on.
yeah, you and
I would say too that even though you do have 2 water types, Pyukumuku and Dracovish fulfill extremely different roles. So they don't even share weakness. Dracovish, dragon typing, of course, resisting electric and grass. Pyukumuku acts as a total wall, only 5 speed, but massive defenses and a move pool to complement that as well. Whereas Dracovish is doing basically nothing but breaking. So even overlapping those types really doesn't affect you all that much, I would say.
I think the thing that I tried to do most after picking Ferrothorn was going after Colossal because, Ferrothorn, I noticed after I picked him, a lot of people started picking up fire Pokemon, and there aren't that many fire Pokemon available to pick from. So managing to get Colossal, which has Steam Engine, if I'm ever up against a fire threat, I can definitely switch in there and probably make out pretty good if people don't expect it.
All right. Yeah, I mean, on that note, you've got the full, very common draft league, grass, fire, water core here. And and definitely, among defensive Pokemon too. So that'll definitely be really good for you. I see you've got a Steel Dragon and Fairy Core also between Hatterene, Frothorn, and Dracovish. So as far as like the bread and butter Draft League cores type coverage wise, I think you're good to go there, and you've got a lot of flexibility for building the rest of your team around one of those cores for sure. So moving into hazards, it looks like you've got quite a bit actually in terms of setting up, and then a decent amount of removal as well. You have multiple Stealth Rock users in Mamoswine, Frothorn, Colossal, and then a couple Spikes users as well. You see Colossal there again, and Frothorn, and then even Sticky Web with Rabombi, and Rabombi then also doubles as a remover with Defog. You also have Mandibuzz filling that role. And then other removal, you got Colossal. Man, Colossal, who would have known? He's a hazards machine. He can set them, he can get rid of them. He doesn't even get rid of them on your side either. So definitely, I say keep an eye on Colossal as far as hazards on this team. Cleric options, we've got Aromatherapy and Healing Wish on Hatterene, both potentially pretty useful. I expect to see Aromatherapy a little more, but you never expect Healing Wish to come out. So there's a lot of potential for a surprise comeback sweep there. And yeah, so that'll definitely help you stay happy and healthy. No Wish Passers.
One last thing, you forgot to mention Leech Seed. I don't know if you're getting it to that or not. I would probably count it in the hazards almost.
Since it's not an entry hazard, it doesn't list it under there, but that's definitely some pressure that Frothorn can put on other Pokemon.
I do think the other thing to note is Hatterene does have Magic Bounce, which doesn't remove hazards, but it can be a nice deterrent or prevent them overall.
Yeah, or help set them up, for your team. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think Hatterene. Wow, I am gonna say right now, I think you gotta lean into these hazards, and you're gonna be a real threat just from that front alone. You can get rid of them if your opponent sets them up. I mean, you can prevent them in the first place, and you can make sure that you've got all kinds of different stuff on your opponent's side of the field. So definitely, lean into that a lot.
I think that synergizes well with the team overall too. You have multiple breakers, Dracovish, Mamoswine, Toxtricity that are just there to smash things around. And things that would be very close to being KO'd now are suddenly KO'd because you end up getting those 2 layers of spikes up on the opponent's team, which you do so much more easily than any other team.
Yeah. So the last little bit here on the site, we've got priority moves, and it looks like you only have one priority move on the whole team. So while hazards are a super strong spot, this is an area that's not quite as fortified, which is all right. In Draft League, there's still room for plenty of surprises. Like, you never know when something's going to be scarfed. You can plan around your opponent's speed specifically. So it's definitely not a deal breaker, but that is Mamoswine with Ice Shard. And so that's definitely going to be something to look out for as your opponents are planning around your team. They're going to make sure that they're not having anything with a weakness up in front of it, so that they don't get sniped down.
That's an additional note there with the priority moves. The team also, in general, is on the significantly slower side. Outside of Rabombi, the fastest Pokemon being Mandibuzz and Mamoswine, which generally are not considered fast.
Yeah, that's a good note too. Definitely on the slower side, but the tiers are pretty spaced out too. I would say that there is some solid Trick Room potential here, and I think Galarian Slowpoke is an excellent setter for that. He's got a super low base speed stat there with 26. You have Pyukumuku, which has base 5 speed, which it's not an offensive Pokemon by any means, but I mean, just going with the theme, I'm pretty sure that's the slowest Pokemon out there. And then Colossal, very slow, but has potential to be a fast sweeper with Steam Engine. And then Hatterene too at base 29. Oh, and then Frothorn at base 20. So yeah, would I be wrong to say that you? What's that?
Don't sleep on offensive Ferrothorn, I'm telling you.
Definitely, the first Frothorn I ever used was Choice Band, actually.
There you go.
So yeah, would I be wrong in saying that you were planning for Trick Room for some degree with this team?
It's kind of hard to say. My first opponent is the Cleveland Castforms, and I'm not sure that Trick Room is really necessary to beat them, but it's definitely a great option that I have at my disposal.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I would say the other best option for that too is that Ribombee and Sticky Webs. Although it doesn't hit flying type, Sticky Webs could be just enough to let things like Mammoth and Toxtricity speed creep just a little bit. So a couple different options there to help out that speed.
Yeah, I think that this team at face value looks like it's not going to be like a fast offensive threat, but I think that there's a lot of potential to flip the tables on your opponent for sure. And Ribombee too. I mean, it is base 124. You can't sleep on that for sure. It gets Quiver Dance, like it can. So most people think of it as like a cleric Pokemon. It sets sticky webs. It uses aromatherapy, but at the same time, like it has sweeping potential all on its own. So I think that this is a really solid team, type coverage wise, and in terms of like field control. So I think you're gonna have the potential for a really good season here.
Right, so I'm going to be taking care of this one because the one we are going to be interviewing today is Matt, aka Mr. Quality, coach of the Cincinnati Incineroars. Taking over just for this one, give him a little bit of a break. So you had the second overall pick, and as someone who is experienced in draft league as I am, I can see you picked well with a Dragapult, number 2 overall. You followed that up in your draft with Charizard, Lapras, Rotom-Mow, Slurpuff, Bronzong, Reuniclus, Delibird, Golurk, and Cinderace. There's definitely a lot to unpack in this one. Dragapult first, obviously great pick, but Cinderace at the end. The second and third picks are Charizard and Lapras. You want to tell us a little bit about what went through your mind as you were going through this draft?
Honestly, a lot of thought went into each of these picks, but to just hit the major ones, Dragapult as my first pick here, going second overall. Figured that would go fast. I believe on Draft League NL for Gen 8, it is currently like the all-site kill leader. And so that was definitely something I wanted. Plus, it's blazing fast on top of its just incredible versatility. So I definitely wanted not only to have that, but to make sure that it was something that I was not going to have to play against. And it takes care of a lot of concerns for Draft League, in my opinion. And then Charizard and Lapras, I had as back-to-back picks, or almost back-to-back, since I was second when the Snake came back. And both of those have the potential to Gigantamax. And honestly, that's why I went for it. I thought they were a steal, being in Tier 5. I mean, you don't even have to Gigantamax Charizard, because you can just Dynamax it, set the sum for yourself, have solar power, and just like start sweeping. If you can get a max airstream off, then you're fast, you're super strong. Like, I don't know. And then even if you go Gmax, then Gmax Wildfire is just ridiculous. Lapras, I mean, always wants to go Gigantamax. It's got that Gmax Resonance to set the Aurora Veil, and then just skipping down to my last pick with Cinderace. I was kind of looking at what was left, and I figured that since I had Lapras on my team, there would be instances, as well as Delibird too, there would be instances where I wanted to Dynamax them instead. And so in that case, I would not have a fire type, so I figured there wasn't a fire type conflict there. So I drafted that, and it's it's fast, it's got good versatility, and it's powerful as well. And court change is, I mean, incredible when it comes to like hazards and just everything else. I mean, there's literally nothing else like it. So
very unique in that sense. Note too, real quick, that Libero is not legal in this league. So the Cinderace hidden ability is not released yet, but that doesn't make it any less than a top tier 1 threat.
Yep, so, and I mean, definitely worth picking in the last round. So
it was sitting there, definitely helped out with the speed tiers a little bit too. So go over a little bit more in depth, and can see the Dragon Steel Fairy Core present in Dragapult, Bronzong, and Slurpuff. A lot of options with all of those picks too. The Bronzong may be a little more defensive, Dragapult maybe a little more offensive, but the speed definitely plays into some of its strengths there. So you grabbed a Rotom form as well, Rotom-Mow for your electric type, as well as Grass for part of that core. Water type Lapras, which even though tier 5 can still function out of that fairly well, and you already touched on the 2 fire types there, Cinderace, Charizard, so you have both of those covered as well. You have a couple Levitators, with Bronzong and Rotom, Delibird in the air isn't going to be doing that much for you defensively, I would think. A couple of psychic types out of Reuniclus and Bronzong as well. I don't know how much that overlap will matter, but any other insights into those?
Yeah, looking at the team, I've got 2 Pokemon of a number of types, and I think that, in a lot of cases, their secondary types differentiate them enough in their roles. Either kind of go hand in hand with each other or are different enough that it would warrant, either bringing both or only bringing one. Namely, we have Reuniclus and Bronzong. I mean, that's just screams Trick Room right there. And so I'd be lying if I said that wasn't what I had in mind. Because I think I have a lot of good speed on here, but I wanted to be prepared because I noticed that a lot of teams were on the slower side, and so I can kind of play both sides here.
Sure, a couple good picks to underspeed even those slow ones for sure.
Yeah, because I mean, looking at this team, since I only have Golurk as a ground type, and so for example, Zero Aura, I don't necessarily want to be sending a lot of these Pokemon out in front of that, and so why not flip the script and go fast.
Absolutely makes sense. Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
and then Slurpuff. Oh, sorry, Slurpuff has Sticky Web, which you'll get to in a moment here.
Right.
Hazards.
Yeah, Slurpuff has plenty of potential in and of itself. It may have lost some of the big power spikes to get, but it still has access to Belly Drum now that you're able to get it from previous gens with an Unburden boost. That's quite a big value you can get out of Tier 3, as far as I can tell. Anything on the stats that we want to look at there, Steve?
This team is just the stats are fairly average overall. Nothing really stands out there. Higher speed, but as stated, the average speed of the entire league is on the lower end. Offensive and defensively, fairly average. HP, fairly average. Just an average team. We'll see how the experience of the pilot does with guiding the team to victory.
Sure, and I'm sure that Delibird has nothing to do with those low stat totals.
Yeah, definitely.
Not at all.
So we'll move on to hazard control a little bit and see what kind of hazards are present. Bronzong, of course, carries Stealth Rock. People may be surprised to learn that Delibird actually carries Spikes. Golurk with the Stealth Rocks, and of course, as alluded to, Slurpuff with the Sticky Webs. So a little bit of variety there. Generally, whenever you're going to see the Golurk, the Slurpuff, the Bronzong, you'll see those hazards. Also, quite a few removal options too. Charizard, though, don't think about it running Defog with the heavy-duty boots introduced. Charizard has the potential to run more defensive sets with Defog. Delibird, of course, notorious for its Rapid Spin and Defog set. We've got to run both. And Rotom Forms getting Defog back is definitely a big boon there. So a lot of different options and variety there for setting and removing hazards. Pretty good overall.
Yeah.
A couple cleric options. Slurpuff is basically the MVP of these extra lists here, in addition to its Belly Drum set, because Slurpuff also gets Aromatherapy and Heal Bell, along with Lapras getting Heal Bell to help out the team in terms of statuses. And wouldn't you know it, there's Slurpuff again, with being the Wish Passer on the team as well. Bulky Slurpuff's at nothing to sneeze at either. As far as priority, Charizard does get Quick Attack. Cinderace gets a couple options. Feint and Quick Attack, not known to most, but Sucker Punch, definitely out there. Delibird, the speed demon that he is, with Fake Out, Ice Shard, and Quick Attack. Dragapult with Quick Attack and Sucker Punch. Lapras with Ice Shard, and Rotom with Sucker Punch. So whether he's in or out of Trick Room, I feel like this team has quite a few options to go first either way, depending on what exactly you're looking for there. So, from top to bottom, I can tell that you've done this kind of thing before. Definitely a good call, I think, to abuse the Tier 5 Dynamax. But one of us here voted against the Tier 5 Dynamax. I don't know who that would be. But yeah, if it's there, go ahead and abuse it. Am I right? That's.
Yeah, we'll see about next season.
Yeah. We'll see. Maybe if you win it all, that'll be no Johns, but no Johns.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I think I have a lot of different strategies I can employ depending on the situation in this team here. And you mentioned Delibird, the powerhouse that it is, deceivingly bringing that stat total and averages down a little bit. But I think that the Pokemon that are here do what they do very well, and we'll see a lot of things shine. I mean, I've actually already had my first match. I mean, Slurpuff kind of put some work in unexpectedly before I shifted the focus over to Charizard. But expect to have a lot of fun with this team for sure.
Sure enough, I think there's plenty you can do with it. So with that, I think we'll wrap it up. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts on the team. I know I appreciate it, having to face you on a little bit later on in the season. We'll take these words hard and really appreciate the insight of a veteran here.
Yeah, and all right, back to commentary. Okay, so next we have the Cleveland Castforms, coached by Matt, also known as Haberfish. Other Matt, we have 2 in the league. And
yeah, I'm other Matt.
Yeah, so thanks for joining us, Matt. We're going to quickly break down your draft order and then allow you some comments, and then we'll take the analysis from there. So your first round pick, you had the 3rd overall pick in the draft, and your first round pick was Galarian Corsola. And then from there...
I was overwhelmed, yeah.
Yeah. From there, you went with Zero Aura, Necrozma, Phalanx, Centiskorch, Obstagoon, Ice-Q, Appleton, Drapion, and Wailord. So, yeah, what was your reasoning behind the first round pick in particular, and then any other picks that you think are notable and want to elaborate on?
Okay, so my first round pick was pretty similar to Joey's first round pick, who's the Akron Agron team, I think is his name.
Yep.
In which I thought that Corsola Galar was Cursola. Because I wasn't quite sure. So I picked Corsola Galar because I was like, okay, this is a weird new Pokemon. And I thought, it'd be fun to pick a bunch of new weird Pokemon that people don't quite understand because some of us haven't played the most recent game. So I don't know. I thought they'd be more fun to play with.
Yeah. You lucked out though because it's tiered higher for a reason. So yeah.
Right.
It's definitely a good single Pokemon.
Yeah, tier 2 or tier... Yeah, and I wasn't sure, so I was like, okay, I'm just going to stick with a weird tier 2 and then move from there. And then I slowly understood the process.
Yeah. All right, cool. Yeah, and you've got some other interesting picks on here for sure, and we'll get to those as we break down the stats and other interesting parts about this team. So, looking at type synergy, we have... Let's see. Appleton, Wailord, and Centiskorch making up that Firewater Grass core.
Yep, that was intentional.
Awesome.
I did do a few intentional things.
That's good, yeah. Matt also is a first-time draft league participant here, like most of us. And let's see, what else? A very fast electric type in Zero Aura, which is cool. And something that a lot of teams like here.
I was pronouncing it like Zora.
Zeraora, yeah, I don't even know. I think it's Zero Aura. I saw the movie with a minute, but I only slightly remember.
I'm very impressed that lasted until the second round too.
Yeah. You would think that that'd be a hot commodity. It definitely stands out in a league like this where there's limited picks, and I mean it does what it does very well for sure. And then another interesting pick, Phalanx, is I think very cool. It has potential with, Defiant can be really neat if you're up against someone with Intimidate, for example, and then the signature move, No Retreat, is going to be great to boost those stats and potentially give you the potential to sweep. And that's not reflected in your stat totals. So very interesting there.
Yeah, I really love being able to pick Phalanx because I remember finding Phalanx in the game and really loving the that move, No Retreat, and it reminded me of Cloyster's Shell Smash, but it was more intense. I really like the animation; is really cute. So I was excited.
It's got a very cool animation.
Yeah, and then I realized I have a Psychic type. I have Necrozma because I did. Yeah, I definitely picked Phalanx after. No. Maybe I did pick Phalanx before Necrozma. I don't know. What? Can you see that list again?
Yeah, you picked Necrozma a round before Phalanx.
Okay, yeah. And Necrozma was a mistake, which is funny. But so I had that, so I'm like, okay, now I can do another core. I'm going to pick a dark type.
Nice. All right, yeah, very cool. You've got a lot of options here with typing, and I think the potential to do some very interesting, not necessarily gimmicky, but unique things, to get sweeps off. Between Phalanx and then Ice.
Yeah, but like you're saying, they're Phalanx, Ice Cube. Like you generally know the things that they're going to do, but for one, it's very difficult to stop them, and two, if you go in with the wrong mindset thinking that's what they're going to do, and you end up bringing something else, like that's a huge surprise. Phalanx has more up its sleeve than just no retreat, for example.
And we didn't even mention Galarian Corsola being like just the massive defensive presence that it is. Like it doesn't necessarily fit into a core on this team, but by itself, I mean, it puts a lot of pressure on there to
I think
break through.
that's the same for the tier ones as well. They're a little bit different. The top three all are, I think, very diverse. They can do a ton of different things, which is what you want from your top tiers.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, some great picks here.
Also looking at this team, the bottom tier, of note, this is the only team in the league that has only one tier 5. So it's pretty clear what the Dynamax plan here is, and it's Dynamax Lord.
Big Whale Lord,
I
baby.
realized
Let's
that.
go.
Yeah. At the end, I was like, okay, so this is my only tier 5, which means this is my only Dynamax. So people know, like, to bring something to counter Whale Lord. I guess if people notice that, I don't know.
But hey, I mean, it's got some really solid stats as far as Dynamaxing goes. I mean, that
How much
massive
HP do you
stat.
want?
Yeah, right. And then, I mean, very respectable base 90 for both attacking stats there. So it's definitely got a lot of Dynamax potential. Maybe not the surprise factor as much as, just, I mean, the presence on the field. Obviously, it's already so big. So, yeah, let's move into hazard control then. You have Stealth Rock being able to be set by Galarian Corsola and Necrozma, and then Necrozma gets Stealth Rock. That's interesting. And then Drapion with Toxic Spikes. And Drapion will also then be able to remove Toxic Spikes by switching in since it is a grounded poison type. You do have no other hazard removal though, so
yeah, I don't have any rapid spinners or anything, so
thankfully looking at your team, oh shoot, yeah, that's gonna be tough for Scorch, not gonna lie.
Scorch usually does bring some boots, but
definitely look into heavy duty boots.
It's tough to be forced into that same item every game.
Yeah,
Scorch was definitely not a choice that I made strategically. It was just like I kind of want a fire type, and Scorch was really cool, and so I picked Scorch.
It is very cool. It's got a lot of potential. I mean, that has sweeping potential too. If you can get like some coils up, then you're just like impossible to break through, and you can just take things down one after the other. So we have nothing listed under cleric options, so aromatherapy or heal bell. No wish users, not a huge deal. Priority moves, we are looking at Sucker Punch from Appleton, Fake Out and Quick Attack from Zero Aura, and then a very interesting and unique First Impression from Phalanx, which we don't see very often. And so that's, an interesting move. Gets the chance to deal a lot of damage, when it first switches in. So maybe you can revenge kill something before you go for a no retreat after that. Some good potential here. Definitely a presence as far as it comes to priority moves. So that's just about the breakdown. If we want to look at the stats in general as they stack up to the rest of the teams in the league, Steven, do you have any specific comments about that?
The Cleveland Castform seem to be doing very good in HP.
The highest in the league.
A lot,
93.
Highest in the league by a good amount. So,
great. That's
all
lovely.
the help this team's bringing will be important.
Yeah, and I mean attack is pretty up there too, and not too bad on the speed. But there's potential here, and for instance, like Ice Cube's noise form is not reflected in that, where it gets very fast very quickly. And I mean, I think Ice Cube is going to be one of those things that you just definitely have to plan like your whole team around as you're coming in. You gotta have a special attacker that can be able to get past that ice body, or else you run the danger of getting set up on, quite frankly, with that belly drum substitute Salic Berry combo that is, I mean, so common and quite frankly so good. So
yeah, I'm excited to play with that. I haven't played with that yet, but I know I've seen like good things about Ice Cube, so I was like, okay, I definitely want Ice Cube. I saw his tier 4. I'm like, it's, I don't know. I really do like sweepers. I'm not really good at a balanced team, but I love sweepers because they're just so fun. I don't know. I don't really like stalling out opponents. So
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, that's what might win the battle. So,
yeah,
all right.
got some speedy boys on my team.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Zeraora alone is one of the fastest Pokemon that's drafted. So, yeah. All right. Well, thanks for your time and good luck this season.
Thanks. Yeah. Good luck to you too. Good luck to all of you.
All right. So up next we have the Seattle Steamrollers, coached by Chad, also known as Chad Johnson, 1996. So, looking at your team, Chad drafted in order Hawlucha, Clefable, Kyurem, Washrotom, Cloyster, Chandelure, Rhyperior, Butterfree, Claydol, and Flygon. So do you have any thoughts on why you drafted any like specific Pokemon here, particularly like Hawlucha as your first round pick?
So actually, I would say the pick I regret most is probably Hawlucha. I didn't really put a lot of thought into it. Like obviously this was a draft league, so our picks were spread across kind of a week. And I was just like, oh, Hawlucha, that's pretty good. And I didn't really look up anything about the metagame. I mean, I still think it'll be useful, but like that's definitely one where if I could do it over again, I might pick something else because I don't really think it is super in line with the rest of my team. I mean, like obviously Hawlucha is always a good Pokemon, but in general, I tried to pick really versatile Pokemon, and Hawlucha is kind of a one-trick pony. So,
yeah, might have gone for Black Kyurem that went right after you.
So. Yep.
Oh, don't we get glad? I'll be glad that didn't happen. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So looking at the team here, we've got a couple cores. We have Clefable, Kyurem, and actually not seeing a steel type for that core. No biggie though. And then we've got. So I think this is actually the first team that doesn't have either the Dragon Fairy Steel or Water Fire Grass core. But that's not to say that there's not a lot of synergy within it. I mean, Rotom Wash fits in on lots of cores, just on its own by its very nature. It's got great typing, only one weakness. And then, yeah, some interesting picks here. If we look at Butterfree and Claydol, both being tier 5, able to Dynamax, and Butterfree actually has the potential to Gigantamax as well, in case you wanted to go for the Gmax Flutterby, is that right? Or no, that's the regular one. Whatever the Butterfree's Gigantamax move is there. Forgive me for slipping. And then Befuddle. Yes, that's the one. But yeah, I mean, regular Kyurem, interesting pick. Hawlucha, you said you kind of regret it, but definitely a solid overall Pokemon if you can proc on Burden. And even Mold Breaker is useful too, if you know that there are abilities that are going to be giving you trouble. And then Cloyster, Shell Smash, lots of sweeping potential. So lots of unique things here. I mean, even like Rhyperior, that hits really hard. Yeah, it's slow, but like it gets rock polish. So I would expect. Oh, I could have sworn it used to.
No, it did used to, and that was one of the reasons I drafted it. But apparently this gen doesn't get rock polish. But I still think Rhyperior will be pretty solid for my team.
Well, you can transfer it in though, so it should.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, so yeah, then moving on. Well, if we look at the stats, we've got some pretty good stats. You've got the highest average special attack of all Pokemon, or of all teams, forgive me, as well as the tied for second highest defense. So it's interesting there. And then actually a really good speed as well. So these stats are really well distributed. I would expect, a lot of well-rounded things from this team, despite not having like stereotypical core synergy. There's a lot of good individual Pokemon that will definitely complement each other really well.
I think the thing that stands out for me the most is how many good value picks there are. There are a lot of early gen Pokemon in here, which, forgive me if I'm wrong, we haven't played competitive Pokemon in more recent gens, but even the ones that you have picked, very good value for their tiers. Kyurem in tier 2 really stood out to me. Chandelure in tier 3 as well. Cloyster out of tier 3. These are all definitely picks that could have been in a higher tier, and I think all mesh well together. I definitely agree with your versatility as well. You mentioned trying to break through a Clefable, and then turns out it's super hyper offensive. There are so many different options to the team.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I would say probably the thing that stands out the most immediately about my team is the lack of steel type. But I feel like with speed control and Clefable, I'm not that concerned about dragons. Plus, I think people went generally pretty light on dragons. In terms of like versatility, like, yeah, I definitely really did try and pick, especially at the lower tiers, kind of Pokemon that I felt would at least be useful. Like, I think Flygon that was probably the one that I thought was the biggest steal for its tier, because it has a really deep move pool, a great speed tier for this generation, okay attack, which can be even better, if you have, like, it has really strong moves. And then also even something like Claydol at tier 5, like, is Claydol the best Pokemon that I want to bring to every match? No, but it's a solid defensive Pokemon. It has Rapid Spin, good typing, that kind of thing.
I just double checked, and Rhyperior does still get Rock Polish. So
it does? Really? It wouldn't
yeah.
let me put it on the... Wow. Let's see, more you know.
I don't know. Maybe it's incompatible with hidden ability or something. Maybe it's a Gen 14. I don't know. Anyway, so moving into hazard control, you are able to set up Stealth Rock with Claydol and Clefable, interestingly enough. And also Rhyperior, of course. You have spikes coming out of Cloyster. They're toxic spikes also coming out of Cloyster. And then as far as removal, you have Defog in Butterfree, Flygon and Hawlucha and Washrotom, and then Rapid Spin in Cloyster and Claydol. So yeah, lots of hazard control here. No sticky web, but I think you have other means of speed control for sure. And you're definitely not going to be in a bad spot when it comes to getting them off your side. You have lots of options. Your opponent's not going to know, like, oh yeah, I need to take that out so I can like keep my hazards up, like, because it could come out of really anything. And so moving on to cleric options, we've got Clefable with both Aromatherapy and Heal Bell. And so, if you want some status removed, then Clefable's your go-to for sure. Speaking of which, it's also your only Pokemon with Wish, which, as Nate mentioned, I mean, Clefable is going to be totally versatile here because, it can be really defensive, play this supporting cleric role, or it can also, go on the offensive, Calm Mind or something like that, which could, really be devastating for opponents. And plus, it's got two great abilities in Magic Garden, Unaware. Unaware being potentially useful when your opponents are setting up. Then you don't have to worry about that. And yeah, then moving to priority, we've got Cloyster with Ice Shard, Flygon with Feint, First Impression, and Quick Attack. First Impression, that's interesting. I didn't know that had that. So that'll be a unique pick. We'll see if other people expect that.
Yeah, Nate, you should close your ears for your Celebi on that one.
Not listening.
Hawlucha with Feint, don't expect to see very often. And Washrotom with Sucker Punch. So definitely some options here. Again, a different kind of pseudo speed control. So something that I think Chad is looking to capitalize on here. So any other thoughts from the rest of you as we wrap this analysis up?
It's just very solid top to bottom. I don't really have anything else.
Yeah, I think a lot of the synergy is not necessarily obvious, but I would expect a lot of different Pokemon to either sweep or just be very heavy hitters throughout the course of the season. And I think that all these Pokemon will definitely see a lot of play. I don't think there's anything that I would consider an inherent bench warmer. So yeah, very solid.
And so just to kind of elaborate on my general strategy, I really kind of focused on, I didn't really want that many defensive Mons. Obviously Claydol is debatably kind of a purely defensive Mon, but I feel like defensive Mons in Draft League really aren't the best in general because they're kind of easy to plan around because a Ferrothorn or a Toxapex is really good in general, but if somebody's going to bring it, you can bring a lot of counters, whereas I think my team has a lot of Pokemon that can be defensive, like Rhyperior or Rotom Wash, or even something like Cloyster can tank a hit or Kyurem, but that isn't necessarily their full focus. That way I don't have to kind of waste one or two team slots on bringing a Mon that isn't really going to be doing too much offensively and is pretty easy to prepare for.
Yeah. I think that just in terms of being able to successfully switch out, it's definitely very important to have some dedicated defensive Pokemon, but like you said, you've got a lot of flexibility with that. Hopefully you're not hurting too much by not having a steel type, but I think you have enough different types that you'll be able to cover different weaknesses regardless of that. So yeah, overall I think very solid. You've got lots of options here. I mean, Clefable kind of the MVP of your other sections area, but certainly every Pokemon brings a lot to the table, and I think we'll have a lot of fun watching this team this season. So yeah, that's all we got. So thanks for joining us, and good luck. All right, so next we're going to discuss the draft of Nate, who has been commentating with us here.
Hello.
So Nate is of the Buffalo Bouffalant, and his draft, just really quick, was in order: Black Kyurem, Aegislash, Seismitoad, Heat Rotom, Excelgor, Galarian Weezing, Scrafty, Kingler, Alolan Dugtrio, and Celebi. So, are there any of those picks in particular you want to give a little detail about why you chose them, especially your first round pick, Kyurem Black?
Yeah, that first round pick, I was so blown away that Kyurem Black made it down this far. The 170 base attack is absolutely ridiculous. I kind of figured I don't know how many other opportunities I'll get to be able to play Kyurem Black, so I thought I might as well take advantage if it fell into my lap in the 5th overall pick. Otherwise, just kind of tried to build around that. My dragon was weak to fighting, so I got an Aegislash. Found myself weak to some ground types. Pick up Levitating Rotom, helps with the fire as well. So I tried to put a little bit of thought into it in that regard, get some hazards and such too. So overall, pretty satisfied.
Yeah, I mean, Kyurem is incredibly powerful. I mean, lots of draft leagues are even banning it, since it has some new tools, specifically in Dragon Dance this generation. And so, to be able to pick that up going 5th, nonetheless, that's incredible. So, all right, let's get into some analysis here. You've got some amazing defensive potential in Aegislash, like on its own. I mean, everyone knows how that works. Sometimes you're defensive, sometimes you're offensive, and whatever mode it's in, that stat is just like through the roof with 140. Although it did get the slight nerf this generation from 150.
I definitely value the versatility that Aegislash has too. Choice specs, choice band, setup, defensive. That was definitely a big factor in picking Aegislash alongside the Kyurem Black.
Yeah, and those two are also part of the Steel Dragon Fairy Core, along with Galarian Weezing, and so some good synergy there. Definitely good to put some positional pressure on your opponent. Then yeah, let's see. Other than that, I mean, you've got the other like top core as well. You've got Celebi, Heat Rotom, Seismitoad, as well as Kingler, actually doubling up as a water type down there, with the potential to Gigantamax actually being in tier 5. So I mean, you've got a lot of good type synergy, some good cores to build teams around, given the situation of what opponent you're going up against. And
although I don't like to say I value those cores so much, they still ended up in the top 6 tier picks that I got. So yeah, that's how the cookie crumbles. I'm not going to complain about that for sure.
Yeah. It's definitely not a hard and fast rule that you have to pick both of those up, but it's definitely not a bad thing to have those, and especially with such good Pokemon here. So yeah, moving on then to look specifically at your Dynamax users. We have Alolan Dugtrio and Kingler. As I mentioned, Kingler, the Gigantamax potential there. I don't know if that'll be quite as potent in singles, but as a Dynamax user, it still can be pretty powerful. Set up the rain.
I was definitely looking at the setup opportunity to get a turn to set up a stat or so. That 55 HP suddenly becomes a lot more. It has a very underrated base 130 attack, as well as sheer force. Or if I really want to go hyper cutter, if that's how they plan on countering it there.
Yeah, that's through the roof as far as attack stats go. And then Alolan Dugtrio for being able to Dynamax, and it's got very solid stats, and also doubling up on the same typing as some other common defensive Pokemon.
It was definitely more of a speed issue there. 110, I thought helped out a lot.
Yeah, for sure. All right, yeah, and then if we look at the stats in general, you've got some pretty solid averages here. You've got the highest average attack stat in the league, as well as the highest average speed. So that is pretty phenomenal, if you ask me.
I do try to make it a rule to get things at a relatively high tier. So I try to get maybe 2 things at 110 speed or higher. it's very difficult this generation though, to do that with anything. I think a lot of it was just my low tier mons end up being a little faster than others.
Yeah, and Excelgor with the base 145, if I'm not mistaken, that's the highest speed of anything that was drafted, and maybe of anything that's available except for Ninjask. And so, that's going to be definitely something to watch out for. You can expect your opponents to build around that, lots of scarves to try and, get the jump on you. So, yeah, definitely, you're putting a lot of pressure on your opponent when team building here. So, yeah, some good potential there. Let's move on to hazard control. We've got, out of Excelgor, we have spikes and toxic spikes. Interesting that it gets toxic spikes. So, it's a little more versatile than, most users, which are poison type. We have Stealth Rock out of Celebi, Stealth Rock also out of Alolan Dugtrio, Defog out of Heat Rotom, and Galarian Weezing. Galarian Weezing also then has Toxic Spikes, being an actual poison type with the potential to be grounded, depending on what ability you choose to run. And then Seismitoad with Stealth Rock as well. I hope I didn't say that twice. I jumped around a little bit. Yeah, so, I mean, you've got all kinds of hazard setting potential and removal potential. No rapid spin, so, you're going to have to remove your own hazards if you have any up, but, it's certainly better to have some removal than none. And you have every hazard present except for Sticky Web, and so that's a definite plus in your favor. Plus, the removal from, having Galarian Weezing be a grounded poison type as well. So I think some really solid hazards here for sure, and the removal is good as well. Then cleric options, we've got 2 users here, Celebi and Galarian Weezing. Celebi with Heal Bell, Galarian Weezing with Aromatherapy. They function the same. So that's definitely good to get some of your Pokemon back in the fight after a burn or something like that. Which, people will be trying to burn you because you have such a high average attack stat. So, definitely good to be able to get back from that. Priority moves, the list is quite extensive here. Excelgor alone having Feint, Quick Attack, and Water Shuriken.
You definitely need a little more speed there.
Yeah, I know, exactly. Already blazing fast, but you never know. Might be a fun counter surprise to those scarfed opponents. Water Shuriken being an interesting one that I don't think we see anywhere else in the league here, having a pretty limited distribution. We've also got Aegislash with Shadow Sneak, pretty standard Aegislash move. Hits very hard and allows you to switch form without having to worry about taking a hit beforehand. And then Celebi with Sucker Punch, Alolan Dugtrio, and Rotom Heat, also with Sucker Punch, and then Scrafty rounding it out with Fake Out. So all kinds of different potential here. Again, speed is not necessarily an issue for your team, but it's amazing that you have such high speed and, such good priority options as well. So I think you're going to be in pretty good shape when it comes to making sure you can attack first, given many different situations. That said, does anyone else have any comments? Steve or Nate?
Yeah, I got one comment. Did skip over Wish Passers, mainly because the Buffalo Bouffalant don't have any Wish Passers.
That is true, yes.
That, along with one of the lowest average HPs, means this team could be kind of weathered down easier than others. There are some recovery options, though, amongst individual Pokemon, but there's nothing to restore health to a Pokemon that doesn't have its own recovery.
So not necessarily a deal breaker, but definitely something interesting to note as you're dealing with positioning when planning for this team. So, yeah. All right.
The only other thing I got is I did try to early on in the draft pick out a few Pokemon I thought I'd have a lot of trouble with and kind of specifically tailor them to that. The Aegislash pick in particular, I saw Hawlucha picked early. I don't want to be weak to that. Here comes an Aegislash. I saw Charizard picked early. That's going to be a threat. Here comes the Rotom Heat. So tried to counter team just a little bit throughout the draft and adjusted throughout. But overall, I'm pretty satisfied with it.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your thoughts. And
thank you very
good luck
much.
this season. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. So the next team that we're going to be analyzing here is the Close Combat Club, and they are coached by John, also known as Hitmonchan. So John is also here joining us today. So thanks for your time today, John. And
Absolutely.
John had the 6th overall pick in the draft order, and has an interesting team here. Just really quickly, in order, he picked Mimikyu first round, then Gudra, Steelix, Virizion, Toxapex, Eldegoss, Incineroar, Poltegeist, Wishy-Washy, and Aromatisse. Are there any of those picks that you want to just really quickly elaborate on, like why you picked them, and maybe specifically like why you picked Mimikyu as your first round pick?
Sure. So I thought Mimikyu is an overall really good Pokemon for singles. When this season first started, so I'm really involved in the VGC and some of the competitive Pokemon scenes. Mimikyu was a big thing in singles and then in single elimination.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, John and I actually, we both have been pretty involved in VGC recently this season. Went to a couple events together, and so now shifting our focus back to singles is definitely interesting for us. And unlike me, John is a first-time draft league participant, and so I'm super excited to, see what he does with this team. I think it's got a lot of potential here. So yeah, let's pop on over to the stats here. Looking at team synergy, I think it's got a really solid. Okay, it would be a huge understatement to say that this team is lacking, or is doing really well defensively, because I mean the average defense stat for this team is 102, and the average special defense is 114. Like, that is ridiculous. We've got a lot of great defensive Pokemon here. Toxapex, Incineroar, Eldegoss, those all make up, a very solidly bulky Firewater Grass Core. And then, like, for the Steel Dragon Fairy Core, you've got Steelix, Gudra, and Aromatisse and Mimikyu, kind of both like fill that fairy role. And so, definitely some very, very bulky Pokemon here on one side or another. So, it's going to be hard to break through a lot of these Pokemon for sure.
And I'd say too, in particular, that Firewater Grass Core, all of them have an extra way to add on to their bulk. Eldegoss and Toxapex both have Regenerator, which can keep the momentum going. And Incineroar, if you want to talk momentum, obviously Parting Shot to help out the bulk as well as U-Turn, and Intimidate too to lower attack. So those three together, aside from just having incredible synergy together, also is super, super bulky. Good luck breaking through any of those.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. And so looking at Tier 5 Pokemon specifically, these were the ones that will, again, be able to Dynamax. We have Eldegoss and Wishy-Washy. Eldegoss being more defensive, I don't expect to see Dynamax that often. So did you pick Wishy-Washy with Dynamax in mind when you were drafting?
Absolutely. I think you have to.
Yeah, Wishy-Washy low speed, but look at those stats, and the HP being doubled upon Dynamax. This is definitely a sleeper here. I'm a little worried about the coverage, but the raw stats themselves should help make up for it.
Yeah, I mean, base 140 on both of its attacking stats, like, that's absurd. On top of its ridiculous defense too, and Nate, like you said, with the HP doubling, I mean, it's going to be hard to take this thing down. It's going to be a monster for 3 turns.
Even just get it down to schooling.
Yeah. And so, definitely people will know that you're going to Dynamax that, but even with that knowledge, like, it's going to be very hard to break through, and you're definitely going to be able to do some damage there. All right, so jumping into hazard control, you've got 2 Pokemon that can set hazards and 1 that can remove. So this definitely isn't like your strongest area, but it's not an essential for sure. And you have an interesting hazard in Toxic Spikes on Toxapex, which can be really interesting in Draft League format, because if your opponent doesn't have any grounded poison type Pokemon, that's harder to get rid of. And so you can start building up residual damage very quickly. You also have Stealth Rock coming out of Steelix. Definitely a great thing to potentially lead with there, or bring in when you've got the favorable matchup. You can force a switch, get the hazards up. And Eldegoss will be your sole source of removal in rapid spins. So if you're going up against someone with really good hazards, like for example the Blessed Walreins, they have all kinds of ways of setting hazards. You're going to want to make sure to keep Eldegoss alive so that you can bring that in and remove those. And an interesting note about Toxic Packs is that it doubles as a way to remove Toxic Spikes. You can bring it in, and it will remove those if your opponent has set them up on your side of the field. Jumping to Cleric options, we've got actually some really solid options here. I wouldn't expect to see as many options on most other teams. You have Aromatisse with Aromatherapy and Heal Bell. Obviously, you don't need both. You can just pick one of those. Eldegoss with Aromatherapy definitely works with it being a more defensive Pokemon. And then Poltegeist, interestingly enough, has Aromatherapy as well. A lot of times you see Poltegeist expected to be pretty offensive, come in, shell smash, and sweep. But it has the potential to fill that cleric role as well. Come in and get the rest of your team back up on its feet by removing status. You have one Wish Passer as well with Aromatisse. It looks to me like Aromatisse is going to be a really interesting Pokemon that's able to fulfill a lot of roles and will be pretty hard to predict. Definitely a sleeper because when you look at all the defensive Pokemon on this team, you might not expect that to be one that stands out, but I think it has a lot of potential. I've actually used it before in Draft League, and it's really solid.
It's definitely a nice budget pick out of Tier 4, and it gets access to Trick Room as well, so it's just total support for the whole team. Actually, very nice fairy type for draft in particular.
Yeah, it's got Trick Room and Nasty Plot, so it has the potential to just like flip the script and start sweeping. And now moving into priority, we've got Gudra with Feint, Incineroar with Fake Out, Mimikyu with Shadow Sneak, Poltegeist with Sucker Punch, Virizion with Quick Attack. So you have lots of options here. I think it's interesting because a lot of them are like very situational priority moves, with really Shadow Sneak being the only like very common priority move that you would expect with like no drawbacks. Quick Attack is of course another +1 priority move, but with it not having the same type as Virizion, it's an interesting move on there. And then Feint, it gets I believe +2 priority, but it's pretty weak and it can break through Protect, so an interesting move there. I'll be curious to see if we see that. And then Fake Out, of course, gets +3 priority, and then guarantees the flinch the first turn you're in battle, and then Sucker Punch, +1 priority, but only if the opponent uses an attacking move. And so you've got a lot of options here. A lot of them have like little strings attached, but definitely I think you're good in that department to be able to come in and counter something that is like trying to sweep but low on health. So yeah, I think overall you like defensively this is going to be a hard team to beat. I am not looking forward to playing this team myself because I don't even want to try and think about how much work I'm going to have to put into creating wall breakers. But
not to mention how suddenly his wall breakers can appear too. Mimikyu has protection to help Swords Dance up. Poltegeist, of course, has Shell Smash. Virizion has Swords Dance and Calm Mind, so it can start setting up that way. Even Steelix has Dragon Dance if you're feeling particularly frisky. So as much as it looks like it's just bulk, there's a lot of opportunity for offense to spring up out of nowhere. We already touched on the Nasty Plot, Trick Room Aromatisse too. This is definitely one of these scarier teams, I think.
Yeah. Steven, you have any thoughts here?
On average, speed's a little bit on the lower side, but again, with all the setup sweepers and priority options, I don't think that is as much of a concern with this team as it could be with others.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes, you don't have to go first if you can survive a hit. So I think that's one thing that this team's going to do really well. John, do you have any other last comments before we let you go?
No, I think you guys covered most of it.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. I'm definitely looking forward to, seeing this team come together and seeing your matches. I think that for a first-time draft, you've got a lot of this is an incredible amount of defensive synergy in my opinion. So yeah, great work and good luck to you this season.
Thank you.
next we're going to take a look at the Waterdeep Wobbuffets, coached by none other than Steve Chuck. Steven,
Howdy.
who has been commentating with us the whole time. Steven had the 7th of 8 picks in the draft, so pretty close to the end there. And in order, his picks were Ditto, Gastrodon, Corviknight, Gardevoir, Lucario, Leafeon, Turtonator, Glycopod, Boltund, and Hydreigon. So, interestingly, saving a Tier 1 pick for the last round. So, any particular notes you want to make about this draft year?
Please talk to us about Ditto.
I understand Ditto's going to be a important thing to talk about. The main thing with Ditto is, there were some wonderful Pokemon taken early on, and I thought, wouldn't it be nice to not have to worry about like speed or setup sweepers or really anything? I also saw Ditto as a fairly good Pokemon down in Tier 3, and I'm pretty sure it was, at least in my opinion, the best Pokemon for its tier in the draft. We'll have to see as things play out if that's the case. But that was the reason for such an early Ditto pick. Outside of that,
it's hard to.
Outside of that, for the Hydreigon at the end, I had kind of saved my second 1 pick, and as things were going on, I just noticed that there was, a ton of good Tier 1 still available, and figured why not wait to the end, get some of these other lower tiers that, other people are still waiting to pick, and then there's plenty of options. I still had a tough decision picking this at the end, so tons of options there.
On lower tiers is an incredibly viable strategy. It helps you make sure that you can guarantee that your team is going to have synergy and reduces the chance of getting sniped. So, yeah, interesting there. So let's jump on over to the stats and take a look here. Got a pretty cool logo, commissioned by Steven from Haberfish. So fun little fact there. We've got so some really interesting type synergy here. Gastrodon, stands out immediately as a counter to Dracovish, which, with that having gone first, no surprise that counters are going to appear here and there. And we also have Leafeon and Turtonator to round out that notorious core of the water, grass, fire. And we also have Glycopod is also a water type there. I don't think I'm missing anything else. Let's see, Corviknight, Gardevoir, Lucario, and Hydreigon. Yeah, so there's Steel, Dragon, Fairy Core. So, the essential cores are kind of checked off here. And we also have a fast electric type in Boltund with that base 121 speed. I think that this is an interesting pick for Tier 4. It'll be really interesting to see how this does. Competitive, I think, has a lot of potential in addition to Strong Jaw. So depending on, what you think your opponent's going to bring, if you think you're going to be up against Intimidate, then, competitive, I think, will really benefit you there. But otherwise, physical might be the way to go. And you've got, base 90 in both attack and special attack. It's incredibly flexible, and I think we'll see a lot of that. And then, of course, not even to mention Ditto. It can be whatever you want. Nothing's more versatile as a revenge killer. It's base 48s. Bring down the average of the team's totals, but that doesn't necessarily represent its true potential because it's, copying the stats, including any boosts of whatever Pokemon it goes out against. And so expect that to be a huge threat, and especially in the draft league when you can, plan against certain Pokemon. And, people are definitely going to have to plan around that. They don't want anything set up in front of Ditto. So, yeah, moving to...
I think the picks that stand out the most to me, that Boltund in the late round was a very good pick. Really short up the speed stat there. Ditto aside, the fastest thing before even the Hydreigon, which came just before it, would have been that Leafeon at 95 speed. Getting the late Boltund to get a fast electric type, super good. The Hydreigon, getting that extremely late as well. That's something that goes in first round all the time. Getting that so late while you're shoring up your lower tier picks, awesome strategy. Really, really like that. The last thing that I want to touch on is the Dynamax potential from Leafeon and Turtonator. Leafeon, I think, often slept on. That 95 speed is very surprising. You don't normally think of the evolutions as being that fast, aside from Jolteon. But Leafeon has a ton of potential there. And Turtonator, of course, it has the potential for Dynamax because it has access to Shell Smash, but it also has some interesting defensive options too, running boots and having rapid spin and things like that. So overall, I think awesome team from top to bottom.
Just to get into a little more detail about specific things this team brings to the table, we've got Hazard Control. We have only spikes being able to be set up, and then as far as removal, Corviknight and Hydreigon both have defog. So this is definitely not going to be a hazard-heavy team, and only having defog as removal is not a problem because oftentimes you're not going to be getting rid of any hazards on your own side, and so nothing inherently wrong with having too little, but just something to consider as you're planning, and one less hurdle that your opponents are going to have to overcome as they're planning building teams to go up against you. Then we have cleric options, Heal Bell being found on both Gardevoir and Leafeon, so some potential there to get you to stay in the game. Wish Passers, we have, again, Gardevoir and Leafeon both having Wish. So these Pokemon, I would expect you to see them function both in some kind of a cleric role, but again, they both have incredible offensive potential as well. So they're both super flexible here, and it'll be really interesting to see how they change their roles week to week. Priority moves, we've got a decent list here. Gardevoir with Shadow Sneak, Glycopod with Aqua Jet, First Impression, and Sucker Punch, Leafeon with Quick Attack, Lucario with Bullet Punch, Extreme Speed, Feint, Quick Attack, and Vacuum Wave. A lot of those on Lucario are, it has so many that you wouldn't even think of some of those, like Vacuum Wave, Feint, and Quick Attack. I don't know why you would ever use Quick Attack with Extreme Speed, but I would definitely expect to see a lot of Bullet Punch, a lot of Extreme Speed, and you never know when you're going to get the others as well.
Vacuum Wave is one of the very few special attacking priority moves.
That is true, and backed with Stab, it's going to be very powerful.
Lucario actually has a higher special attack than attack, so
that's
don't be shocked.
Yeah, look out for that. Glycopod has a very powerful First Impression. Expect that to be, something to be planned around, and potentially used in contingency with that emergency exit ability. So if it gets switched out, then if it's already gone for that turn, not a big deal. Next time you bring it in, then you get to use it again. And having priority outside of that to rely upon is incredible as well. So you're not limited to just being able to use it on the first turn. And then Gardevoir, having some surprise priority, in addition to just being a generally powerful Pokemon, having pretty solid typing, and having all these cleric options already. I'm thinking that at a glance, Gardevoir is going to be one of the more versatile Pokemon on this team, outside of course, Ditto. And then I think Leafeon there would have the potential to be right up there in terms of versatility. So yeah, overall, I think this team has a lot going for it. Both Dynamaxers are have the potential to be really good and to really capitalize on that ability available to them. And yeah, I think it has a lot going here. Do you guys have any comments on it?
I just imagine trying to wall the combination of things like Hydreigon and Glycopod and that Turtonator, the Gardevoir, and while also trying to break through Corviknight, Gastrodon, as well as trying to keep wary of Ditto, always there copying your boost if you try to speed past them or boost defense up on them or anything. Ditto fits in very well here. I definitely understand why you picked it first overall.
Yeah, I definitely expect this team to be very difficult to plan for. Again, some of these Pokemon won't be able to be broken through in one attack, and to not be able to get a boost on them until you take Ditto out is going to be very tough, and I'm not looking forward to going against this when the time comes.
Imagine facing that one week one, eh?
Yeah, Nate, you got that to look forward to. So,
yikes.
All right, Steven, any final comments for us here?
No, I think we've covered it. Looking forward to the league.
Yeah, all right. Looking forward to it too. Thanks for joining us and good luck. All right, so next up we have the Akron Aggrons being coached by Joey, also known as Joey. And he is here with us again, so thanks for joining us.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so to quickly go down his draft order, Joey had the last spot in the draft, so he had back-to-back picks in the snake order each time that it got to him. And so his first two picks back-to-back were Excadrill and Dugtrio. Then he went with Marini and Togekiss, and Araquanid and Espeon, Gengar and Roselia, and then Avalugg and Flareon to round it out. So are there any specific picks that you want to elaborate on, like why you chose them, or like, why you made the first pick that you did?
Oh, sure. I've got some great elaborations. So starting off, it had been a while before we decided on the rule set, and I was a bit fuzzy. I kind of thought we were doing VGC, so I was going for a kind of Sandstorm team with my first two picks. And then it turned out we were doing singles, so probably could have done better on those.
Yeah, it's
also,
definitely a
yeah.
good Sandstorm lead there, the Excadrill and Dugtrio.
Then also, when I drafted Marini, I kind of forgot that it was Marini and not Toxapex. I was like, why is this tier 5? Oh, well, let's take it. That seems pretty good for the slot. And then it turned out Marini is not Toxapex. Big shocker there.
Yeah. Speaking of big, though, it has the potential to Dynamax being a tier 5 Pokemon, and so I assume that that's something
Big
that we
Marini.
may see from time to time. Yeah, Big Marini. All right, cool. So now that we've gotten the overview of all the picks, let's jump into the specifics of your team here. So looking at type synergy, we've got some interesting type synergy here. Obviously, Marini is going to end up being a more defensive Pokemon. And, being tier 5 has the potential to Dynamax. You actually have the Fire, Water, Grass core all in tier 5. So they could, kind of fulfill that defensive role, or on a dime, flip the script and go offensive as well.
Right.
Although Dynamax does allow you the potential, to just honestly have some bulk for 3 turns too. So there's some potential there. Outside of that, I'm seeing a Fairy and Steel in Togekiss and Excadrill. But beyond that, I don't see a Dragon type, but that's cool. You've got some good coverage, and then Avalugg, definitely another great defensive Pokemon. Ice is kind of, not the first type you think of.
Type, but
yeah, not the best defensive type, but
stat.
yeah, it's very large defense stat. And its attack is like nothing to laugh at either.
There are a couple things that stand out to me. One is the lack of an electric type. Generally, you like to kind of volt switch around a little bit, get something a little faster, but I don't see that on here. But on a positive note, I really love the Dugtrio pick, even though it may have been a mistake going for Sandstorm. Dugtrio is another one of those mons that you really have to prep for every single time. Arena Trap is such a devastating ability. It seems like a pretty decent bargain in Tier 2. Again, your opponent has to prep extra hard for that every single game.
Right.
Yeah. Any other comments on the stats here before we move on?
Let's see. One general note on the stats, as I'm looking at them, the averages in general are on the low side for the league. Has been brought to my attention that there are multiple not fully evolved Pokemon, which contributes to it, but it's definitely something that'll need to be overcome to achieve W's moving forward.
Yeah,
right. I did notice about halfway through the draft that my stat totals were kind of low, but oh well.
Yeah, and that's not the end all be all. Like, obviously, a more defensive Pokemon like Avalugg, like it doesn't want any speed. It just doesn't care, and so like it's okay if that stat's like on the lower end. Although your speed actually isn't like terrible. It's probably like middle of the pack for the league.
And having 3 Pokemon at least base 110, the upper end Pokemon are fast enough to make up for it overall.
Yeah, so you've got every Pokemon kind of shines in its own way, and while they don't come out to like a good average number, there's certainly some stars here and there.
Right.
And lots of good potential offensive presences, which is important. Excadrill, Gengar, Dugtrio, Togekiss, Araquanid. Any of these could, have the potential to be an offensive presence for sure. And a number of them are, pretty fast in their own right. A lot of the defensive Pokemon just, lower that average. So, Moving from there, then into hazard control, we've got Arachnid, able to set sticky web. Super fun hazard here. We've got Stealth Rock being set by Doug Trio and Excadrill, and then Toxic Spikes by Marini, and then and Roselia, and then Roselia can also set regular spikes. For removal, you've got Togekiss with Defog, and then Rapid Spin on Excadrill, Avalugg, and Magic Bounce on Espeon. So that can help prevent the setup of hazards as well as, get some up on your own side. If you think that your opponent's going to go for a hazard attack, you can definitely switch in and get that on the opponent's side of the field. So yeah, definitely, that'll be super helpful here.
That is absolutely stacked. That is 8 of the 10 Pokemon that have something to do with hazard control. Only Gengar and Flareon not being a part of that. That is so crazy.
Yeah, so you got a lot going for you here, and it looks like you have every single hazard present, as well as both main methods of hazard removal. Plus, you have a couple grounded poison types that'll get rid of toxic spikes.
That was another advantage of the big Marini.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, for hazards, I think you're in a really good spot. You're not going to have any trouble setting them for sure. And as far as preventing them, you've got some good synergy there as well. Moving just very quickly to cleric options, you have Heal Bell on Espeon and Flareon, a couple of evolutions there, as well as Togekiss, and then Aromatherapy on Roselia. So man, you have a lot of great options for that too. So I'm starting to see a lot of really great, non-offensive potential for this team here, where you're going to be racking up a lot of damage and recovering from the residual effects of your opponents very quickly. As well, you've got Wish on 3 different Pokemon: Espeon, Flareon, and Togekiss. So that's going to be super interesting to see. Even Pokemon that don't have natural recovery, they'll be able to stay in the game for a while your opponent is switching out, taking damage to hazards. And then priority, this is definitely a longer list, I believe, as far as the league goes. We've got Sucker Punch on Dugtrio and Gengar, Quick Attack on Espeon and Flareon, and then Extreme Speed on Togekiss. So lots of options. Not as much diversity on type coverage there, but that's okay. Sucker Punch and Quick Attack, they get the job done in a pinch, for sure. And Extreme Speed, obviously Togekiss is not normally a physical attacker, but it's kind of just like a pinch scenario type of thing anyway. So yeah, you've got a lot of good comeback potential there. So that said, is there any other comments, Steven or Nate, you want to make, and then we'll toss it back to Joey for final thoughts?
I guess the only thing I'll say is all those extra things. You got a ton of potential with the hazards, with the clerics, the wishing, and everything. Most of these Pokemon look pretty straightforward, but taking that deeper look reveals there is a lot more to just about everything here. So to try to be a little more creative, I suppose, in team building, and should be able to find some decent success with that.
Don't let the hazards get you down. Or sorry, the stats get you down, because with hazards and cleric support, you've got a lot of room for, amazing potential here. So, all right, Steven, anything?
No, I don't have anything else.
All right, cool. Well, thanks so much for your time, Joey. Like I said, I think you've got a pretty solid team here, as revealed especially by more in-depth analysis. So I wish you luck with your season, and yeah, thanks for joining us.
Yep, thanks for having me.
All right, so we're gonna shift gears here for a little bit. Matt of the Cleveland Castforms wanted to do some fun little superlatives for the certain teams that most embody different criteria, and he hasn't told us what they are yet. So we're gonna have some fun with this. So Matt, go ahead and take it away.
Right. Okay. So I was looking at the different teams. I thought, well, there are kind of like little themes here. Maybe not gym leaders, but like, who does this remind you of? So my first question is for all of you. Which team reminds you most of a Team Rocket member, of someone who works for Team Rocket? So who's got like the most evil Pokemon on their team?
Okay.
I see the Akron Aggrons have 3 poison types, so that's something that catches my eye for that.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I see a
So yeah, I think
Gengar.
the Cleveland Castforms.
My own team. You think I work for Team Rocket?
I mean, Necrozma, Obstagoon, Drapion, and Galarian Corsola all seem like very ominous to me.
Mm.
I can see that.
Yeah.
I'll give a shout out to the Seattle Steamrollers. I'm just looking at these sprites. I just get in that vibe.
Yeah, Cloyster, Rhyperior. I don't know. Claydol's kind of neutral. But with like a Clefable and a Hawlucha, that's too like superhero-esque. I don't know. It's pretty nice.
All right,
Steven,
so I think
you're
you
the
win that
one with
one.
a Corviknight and a Hydreigon and a Golisopod.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't know. I would say it's either between Waterdeep Wobbuffets for me, or no. Yeah, I definitely have to say, yeah, Steven, your team is pretty ominous.
Hey, congrats.
Yes. Did it.
All right.
Okay. So that was the first one. That was a warm up. The second one is most likely to be a gym leader. So I would say like whoever has the most similar types, although they're all pretty well rounded.
Shining again in the Akron Aggrons with his 3 poison types.
And 2 ground types.
Ooh.
Oh yeah,
We're getting some themes going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that looks like it could be a winner to me. He's got 2 water types. 2
Couple
poison.
psychic
3
types for you.
Oh, you already said 3 poison types. For me, a couple psychic.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, true. I came close to drafting another one, but I held back only because I had 2 already. And I have 2 fire types too. So.
Yeah, it seems like the max is like 3. Okay.
Oh,
so
and
like
2 ice types. So I have like 2 of a lot of different things.
2 of a few, but I don't think anyone else hits 3.
Yeah, so I might have to go to the Akron Aggrons then.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. So now here's a more challenging one. Most likely to be crushed by Whitney's Miltank. So who is like totally crushed by Rollout or Whitney's team?
Um,
And maybe think of like pre-evolved form, someone who they're their 4th gym leader. She's what, the 4th gym leader in Johto. So who gets crushed pretty early
3rd?
on?
I don't know.
Oh, 3rd maybe.
I would take a look at probably either the Cleveland Castforms or Seattle Steamrollers, neither of which have a steel type. When I think of Whitney Miltank, I think of the body slams and the rollouts, normal and rock. If neither of you have a good steel type to resist both of those, then that's something that stands out to me a bit.
Yeah. I'm thinking definitely not the Close Combat Club. Very defensive.
I don't think they're getting steamrolled by anything.
Yeah, okay. And then here's my last one. So most likely to be Kalos Pokemon League runner-up champ. So who's doing really well?
You're doing him dirty.
Who's doing really well, but then just like totally flops at the end? Like what?
I think this award was
team?
written for me.
Okay, so Cincinnati.
I wasn't going to say anything, but
yeah, the last season we did was not a draft league; it was just VGC. But
oh yeah,
I came in as the number 1 seed and lost first round.
Oh man,
right. And I was
you lose to in
that
that first round.
To Haberfish here.
Oh,
other Matt.
seeded last.
My team had done so well all season, and it turned out that I just never ran into anyone with defensive steel type, quite frankly. And I ran into one first round and was just totally unequipped to deal with it, which sounds like such a common thing, but I don't know. None of us were really VGC players at the time, and also, like, I don't know. For Hawthorne, I feel like it's somewhat of an unorthodox pick in VGC 19. So.
Yeah, it was definitely an upset, and it was a Pokemon that I chose just because I knew what I was doing. So I don't know, very opposite
worked out for
time.
you. So.
Yeah.
All right. So
okay,
I get the Choke Award.
Yeah, that's all I got for you.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that. It's definitely a fun way to round this all out. All right, and that does it for this draft. I think everyone did really well, considering that almost everyone was a newcomer, and given that the season is starting this week already, The action is already beginning, and I'm very excited to seeing all these matches. We've got a lot of great teams, and I can't wait to see how everyone plans for each matchup and who prevails when they go head to head. So that being said, good luck to all the coaches. Thanks for sharing your thoughts, and I hope to see you on the battlefield.